When it comes to the amount of glycogen or the amount of glucose that's stored in the body, we tend to have around about 300 to 400 grams of it in our muscles. We then also have liver glycogen or hepatic glycogen. We tend to store around about 100 grams in our liver as well. We also have about 25 grams of blood sugar in a healthy human available at any one time as blood glucose. Now, when it comes to the difference that training makes to the amount of glycogen that's stored in our muscles, if we are untrained, we tend to store about 80 to 90 millimoles per kilogram of wet weight muscle. So basically, if you dissect muscle, take a kilogram of it, you'll probably find about 80 to 90 millimoles. Don't bother converting this into grams. It's not worth it unless you're really nerdy. We're just using this to put the other two things into context. An endurance athlete will tend to have about 130 to 135 millimoles per kilogram of wet weight in glycogen in their muscles. And then a carb-loaded endurance athlete, that can nearly double. We're talking around about 220, 230 millimoles per kilogram of wet weight muscle. That's a lot of glycogen. So we can see that the carb loading, it does work to an extent. Now, another thing that happens when we're talking about glycogen in the context of exercise, it may be reasonable to assume, knowing what we do now about the glycolytic energy system, that lifting weights, you may have heard, doesn't decrease glycogen by all that much. You may have heard that in the context of, no, you don't need your carbs after your workout or whatever. Now, this was a study done back in 1991, before I was born, that compared two groups. H and L basically referred to the amount of weight they were lifting, H standing for heavy, which was about 70% of their 1 rep max, and L meaning light, which is about 35% of their 1 rep max. And basically, the researchers had each group do leg extensions to failure and had them do 6 sets of that. And after set 3, after set 6, and after 2 hours after the end of the exercise, they took muscle biopsies to measure the amount of glycogen and also the amount of lactate that had built up in their muscles at that point. And you can see here that you may expect that the low weight group who are doing many, many more reps, you may expect that their muscle glycogen concentrations would drop dramatically compared to the high rep group. You can see that's really not the case. They started at about the same, and after set 3 and after set 6, they were pretty comparable. There were no significant differences between the groups. Same with the lactate concentrations. There were no significant differences between the groups at any point of the study. And what's also really interesting here is that 2 hours after the exercise, without actually eating anything, they were already starting to resynthesize glycogen. So take homes from this. 1, yes, your weight training will decrease glycogen. 6 sets of leg extensions to failure dropped it by about 40%. Admittedly, that's not glycogen depletion to the same level that running a marathon will deplete you of glycogen. However, it's still a fairly significant amount of depletion. 2 hours after that with no food, they were already starting to resynthesize glycogen. So having a ton of carbs directly after your workout, just a weight training workout, maybe not completely necessary. Your body will resynthesize some, so it's probably not worth stressing about all that much.